All right, we are recording. Hi, Verena. Thank you so much for being here.
Jonathan, thank you so much for being here. And we are just pushed the recording button, very Aries style,
Mhm.
not so much preparation. We are just diving in and do that.
Yes, exactly. Right before we press record, though, we've had some really juicy conversation that I'm really excited to be weaving into this recording. So today we are going to talk about the nodes, the lunar nodes moving into Aries and Libra. It's been in Scorpio Taurus since I believe January
January.
2022. Is that right?
Yeah.
And it's going to stay in Aries and Libra until January 2025, right? Um, and so this is a significant transit, I would say. I really feel the shift on a very personal level, and I'm really excited to talk with you at the beginning tail or the beginning head. I'm like tailhead in the beginning part of this transit and just kind of see, what comes through us. And, as always, I think of these times that we have together, Verena, as like opening the portal. There's something to me about talking about transits that really help situate me energetically on where I'm at. Where am I in the river of the cosmic energies, right? And, as we often say in a lot of our recordings together, this isn't really prediction necessarily, but these are some of the things we're thinking about. These are reflections of what Aries and Libra brings up for us. And so before we begin, I'm wondering if maybe you would want to introduce yourself a little bit. And for those of you who are listening who don't know Verena, Verena has been on my podcast for some time. And for those of you listening to Verena's YouTube channel, I've been on your channel a couple times. But just in case you're new, would you want to introduce yourself, Verena?
Yeah, I would love to. And I
Mm,
mean, the North Node is an Aries, so it's about the I am. Hello, I am.
correct.
I'm Verena. I'm an evolutionary astrologer and an astrologer in evolution. I actually really like this phrase. I also, my astrological work is based on evolutionary astrology, but I'm also adding in branches of other astrology branches. I also work with the Akashic records, and for me, astrology is really, the transits such as the lunar nodes are just a reflection of the energy that is in the field. And that is for me the power and magic of astrology, that you can actually see or read in the sky what you maybe on a subconscious level already feel, and gain more clarity so that you can co-create and live in a more conscious way. And so I think astrology really helps us to deepen and widen and expand our consciousness. I live in Austria and I teach astrology. I give one-on-one astrology sessions. And yeah, I think that's it. This talk comes out on my YouTube channel and on Jonathan's podcast. So if you are here on my channel, if you just want to have the audio version, hop over to Jonathan's podcast. And if you want to see us and you are on Jonathan's podcast, then come to my YouTube channel.
Yay. Thank you, Verena. That's such a beautiful introduction. I love what you said about um, how working with astrology can help us gain clarity for the energy we're already feeling. I definitely feel a lot of that in my own devotional practice with astrology as
Yeah.
well. My name is Jonathan Ko. I am a mystic. I'm an astrologer. I'm an artist. And my astrological practice, I would say, is loosely rooted in Hellenistic techniques, but I've also been studying evolutionary for some time, archetypal, and so I consider myself a pretty eclectic astrologer. And yeah, I think what I will say about my practice is that often my orientation is towards assisting those who are listening to my podcast, who come to me for one-on-one readings, who are in my student space, to remember who they are and to come back to um, a sense of their essence, a sense of like the animating life force that has always been running underneath them. And I think working with the planets have been one of the most helpful framework for me. It's been a long journey learning astrology to get to a point where I feel an actual intimacy with the planets. But I would say that it's also one of those practices, one of those modalities that continue to call me back again and again. And at this point, something I've been realizing with this particular transit, so we're recording this, a couple days after the nodes move into Aries Libra. Mars just moved into Virgo. Sun is in Leo. I guess something I will say about me and my practice is that recently I've been realizing how meaningful my own astrological practice for me is. There is a lot of study that's going on in astrology. Like, in order to have some level of fluency, there's a lot of studying that's necessary. And also, um, it's always felt like home so far for me.
Mm.
There's something about
Yeah.
it that feels like home. Yeah. And I, like Verena, I also mix in other modalities. I've been studying human design pretty seriously for a little bit now. I I have a relationship with the Akashic field, and yet astrology, and also the tarot, and yet astrology
Yeah.
has always been, I think, the baseline of my practice. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, I really like what you said about helping others to come back to their essence. So I have in my bio and on my homepage, I have written down, I'm here for soul rewilding.
Mm.
So I think astrology really helps us to come back to our soul self. So
Yeah.
that self, this is really our wild self before any conditioning. And yeah, I think that actually to, yeah, getting into this Aries topic, that there is something with Aries North Node too, to really come back to your spark, to your essence, to this true spark of your spirit that comes into the world. And I don't know how you feel, Jonathan, but I think maybe it's helpful for the listener and for the people who are watching this to just say maybe one sentence about the lunar nodes in general, and
Mm.
then go into this shift from Scorpio, Taurus into Libra, Aries, what is
Yeah.
showing up for us. Um, so I have when the lunar nodes changed on July 17th, so we are recording this on the 20th. I have written an Instagram posting about the lunar node shift, and I actually I think that is pretty the essence of what I think about the lunar nodes.
Mm.
Is I can just read it. The transiting lunar nodes, nodes of the moon, indicate and reflect the archetypal energies and themes that are important for our individual and collective evolution. They move backward in the zodiac. The North Node and the South Node build always an exact opposition and stay around 18 months in one archetypal axis, polar signs. So it's really this reflection of topics and themes that are important to, on the one hand, heal and integrate, South Node, and on the other hand, evolve.
Mm.
So this is for me the transiting nodes. I'm not talking about the nodes in the birth chart because they're a big deal from an evolutionary point of view, but to get a better sense of the transiting nodes, that
Yeah.
would be my perspective. But
Yeah.
I'm completely open to yours.
I love that, Verena. Thank you for giving that very clear succinct summary. I think what I would add to that is I would also say that first of all, the lunar nodes are not actual planetary bodies, right? I always start there because they're really calculated points, right? They're calculated points of the moon where the eclipses happen every year. And so the eclipses happen when the sun, the moon, and the earth are in such an alignment that one of the luminaries will be blocked or seemingly both, right? From the perspective of Earth. And so already I think we can draw from the symbolism of that if we think about the sun as maybe being the essence, the soul essence of a person, the organizing principle that cohere a person's existence, and then the moon as that which is the principle of translating spirit into matter, right? We can think of the spirit maybe kind of as the soul, the moon as kind of the body, the earth as like the reality of who we are. And you can think of the lunar nodes as speaking to the alignment of all of this, right? It speaks to the alignment of like spirit coming into matter and then brushing up against earthly matters. That's kind of how I think about the lunar nodes. Another thing I will say is I also like to bring in some of the Vedic mythologies because those are some of the older significations we know, not that they're better, but just as a background, right? The North Node, yes, they are the nodes are equated to the dragon, right? Like there is Rahu, which is the North Node, which is the head of the dragon, and then Ketu, which is the tail of the dragon, the South Node. And so we can think about the North Node as kind of this principle of that which is always hungry, right? Like consistently wanting more of the experience with Aries, yeah. More drive towards the thing. And then you can think about the South Node as like this archetype that's always kind of digesting. You know, that's how I think about it, actually. It's like continuing to think about what needs to be released, continuing to think about what needs to be held on to, right? But yeah, all the principles around hunger or consumption and digestion or release.
Yeah, and I actually, when I reflected about the lunar nodes the last days, and from an evolutionary perspective, we don't see as much as sometimes in more classic Western astrology that the South Node is something that we have to let go of and that is something bad and we must go into the North Node. From evolutionary astrology perspective, in the lineage of Jeffrey Wolf Green, which I'm learning and sharing about, it's more about that you have skills in the South Node and you can carry them with you to evolve the North Node. And I think that I came more to this idea, especially now with the transiting nodes, that it's yes, there is a release with the South Node, but it's more in a way of healing and integrating. I think it's more this, not this, no, that's bad, that should go away. It's more this, okay, there's something that really needs my awareness because I'm living the archetype that is the South Node, in our case now Libra, maybe in a destructive way. So there wants to be something healed so that I can live it in a constructive way that helps me to evolve the North Node. And also, I really like with the Vedic perspective that the North Node is not just good, and we don't just glorify the North Node, but also the North Node, for sure, that is a point, or that is an archetypal tool that wants to be explored, that wants to be evolved, but there can be also shadow sides. So I think that's really important to keep in mind. And I feel and I'm super curious now, Jonathan, what do you feel with the Aries North Node? Because I think that I see it as especially after the Taurus Scorpio nodes. So I have this feeling that this is just one entry point, maybe for us, that with Taurus and Scorpio, we did so much deep foundation work over the last 18 months. And we had additionally to that the Venus cycle in Capricorn, which really emphasized that. So it was really about Scorpio digging deep, really working on our soil and soul. It was really about getting in contact with our deepest fears, with survival issues, with money issues, with really wounds that were so deep from our past lives, from our past. And on the other hand, really feeling more and more Taurus North Node, what is really valuable for us, what is really important for us, what our heart desires. Where we really want more stability in our life, where we, what is really important for us, and what means abundance for us, what means being fulfilled and rich for us personally. And I think now with the Aries North Node, so from Taurus into Aries, we can now transform this deep knowledge that we have now gained into aligned action. So for me, one very positive aspect of this Aries North Node, and I see it in my own life, I see it with clients, is that many clients of me say, now I know what is important for me, and now I have I have the courage to now do it and bring it into action.
Yes.
And I feel that that is a beautiful opportunity actually with the Aries North Node to say, okay, I am now courageous enough to take the things that I have learned in my depth over the last months and alchemize it into aligned action. And I'm now brave enough to really show up and really stand up for myself and don't adapt and people please and fawn any longer, but now really over the next 18 months, so we have enough time to learn this, to be more and more courageous and to be very honest with myself. And another point, and then I stop, is that I think Aries is the first fire sign, and it's the first sign. It's really about self-discovery. And it's really about, but when I have let go of all of these old versions of myself, Taurus, Scorpio, Venus and Capricorn, after I have deconditioned and let go of all of these rules and roles, who am I? And now we can try that out.
Yeah, wow. So beautiful, Verena. I'm just like taking it all in, drinking it in. I'm going to start with a tangent, actually. So everything that you were sharing just now reminds me of how I've been working with astrology the past year in teaching astrology in one of my containers called Astrology as Praxis, where my students and my collaborator Britton and we've been kind of playing with this idea of the cosmic body and essentially thinking of all of astrology, right? All of the planets, all of us included as like one giant body. And I want to go back to something that you were saying that kept echoing in my mind about how to think about the North Node and the South Node and thinking about the integration of the two, because I think that's such an important point. And it's reminding me of this idea that like we are all part of the cosmic body. We are the cosmic body and we are all part of this giant cosmic body. And so I think you are bringing such an important reminder that all of these seeming polarities are actually, it's like when I think about my own body, right? And I'm like, let's say my shoulder is hurting, right? Most people would not think about cutting their shoulder just because their shoulders are hurting, right? Like you want to figure out how to work with the rest of the body that is maybe causing this tension, that is maybe causing this discomfort. And what, how can you maybe release some of this discomfort, right? How can you fortify other aspects in order to, um, you know, alleviate the pressure that is currently held in a particular part of the body. So I want to start there. And then I really love everything you're sharing about Taurus Scorpio moving into Aries Libra. And something I will bring into the conversation here is the fact that Taurus and Scorpio, um, at least in traditional astrology, are ruled by Mars Venus, and so
Mhm.
is Aries Libra. And I think
Yeah.
it's really interesting thinking about how essentially, right, for about 36 months, then we are working with Mars and Venus themes. And I like to think about Mars and Venus themes as on an essential level, very different than, say, working with Jupiter Mercury theme or Sun and Moon theme, because there's something very visceral, there's something very, um, very much about working with the body, working with the lived experience, working with the personal range of our energetics when it comes to Mars and Venus. Mars and Venus are very specific, right? When we think about the sun and the moon, they're also specific, but there's kind of an ethereal quality to it. But when we think about Mars and Venus, it's the principle of relationality that is felt in the body, that is felt in the space, right? Um in the energetics, in the words, in the consequences of how we relate to one another. And so, often when we think about Venus, we think about the principle of attracting. And when we think about Mars, we think about the principle of separating. And so I think those themes we continue to work with. And it's interesting thinking about how the North Node was ruled by Venus. And then now the North Node is ruled by Mars, and there is, I think, something about working with that shift, right? Working with like, maybe prioritizing or evolving towards the Venusian and then evolving towards the Martial. And
Mhm.
also, what I will bring into the mix here too is for folks to be thinking about how Taurus, Scorpio are fixed signs, and then Aries, Libra are cardinal signs, right? So, what we may have been working with throughout Scorpio, Taurus, nodal axis situationship is we may have been working with really long-standing patterns of holding back, right? Of trauma, of things that are kind of stuck in the past, but also will continue to, some versions of it we will continue to be working on throughout our lives, right? There's something about the fixed signs that has to do with uh, the reality that we are in a body, and when we're in a body, we are never fully free, right? Quote unquote, we're never ever fully free. But I think with regards to the cardinal, the stories that are going to be coming up to the surface, the things that we will want to be doing, will have less to do with breaking up stale or stuck patterns and have more to do with what are some of the fears that we come into contact with when we want to show up or when we want to start things that we haven't really seen before. We haven't seen modeled. So, for example, in a lot of my client sessions, what I've seen a lot is people coming and saying, hey, I really want to live this financially abundant life, but I've never had parents, I've never been surrounded by people who had financial abundance, who didn't do it in a way that's reckless and destructive to everybody around them. Or people coming and saying, hey, I'm really interested in trying out this new relationship pattern or this way of being in relationship. The theme of like polyamory or non-monogamy has been really coming up a lot in like the people who have come to me and my friends, and even like in my own field. And the question here is, how do we chart new courses? How do we create new pathways? When we know intellectually it's possible, but we haven't seen models of it out there, that are able to do it in a way that we perceive to be successful or we perceive to be gratifying. And I think specifically thinking about the North Node in Aries, I think one thing that I'm watching out for with regards to this period, right, is a feeling of isolation. I think Aries can really bring up a lot of isolation because
fucking lonely.
yeah, it's so fucking lonely to be in the Aries, The Aries part of you is the part that's like so deeply in touch with what is so uniquely you, right? And sometimes that uniqueness has to do with the essence of what it is that you want to do. Sometimes the uniqueness have to do with like how you want to do it. Like the way, even like thinking about this recording, Verena and I, even though we've studied with some of the same teachers, we have some of the same, we share some of the same lineages, but channeled through our specific bodies and our lived experiences and our voices, it will be really different, and so even if you are doing something that seems so basic on paper, you're going to have to do it your way. And when you have to do it your way, there's always trepidation around, like, how the fuck am I going to do this? Like, how does this make sense? How do I do it in a way that makes sense to me specifically as a unique individual?
I love that, Jonathan. And I really want to dig deeper into this individuation
Mm,
thing and the loneliness.
mhm,
But before that, I would really love to reflect or add something about the Venus Mars situation.
mhm,
So,
mhm,
and before that, I just want to say that I think it's really interesting that at the moment we have this alignment between the lunar nodes and the Venus cycle. So the lunar nodes are always 18 months in a polar sign, and the Venus cycle is 19 months.
mhm,
So the new Venus cycle in Leo starts on August 13th, and it's pretty in alignment with the lunar node shift. And I think that this is really interesting to keep in mind too, that we have this very fiery, very self-expressive Venus cycle in Leo parallel with the North Node in Aries and Venus as the ruler of the South Node in Libra.
mhm,
And I think that it's really interesting that we have the North Node in Taurus ruled by Venus and now the South Node in Libra ruled by Venus. And we experience over 18 months twice. We experience Venus, the inner side of Venus and the outer side of Venus. So I really like this model that we also have in evolutionary astrology. I don't know. So Venus really, this inner side, which is all
mhm.
about our self-relationship,
Yeah.
our listening to our own heart,
Mhm,
listening, what do we need, which is all about, yeah, really cultivating a relationship to our needs, to our sensuality, to what we love, what is joyful for us. This is more the Taurus Venus. And then we
mm,
have the Libra Venus, which is the outer side of Venus, where we are listening to others,
mm,
where we bring balance into my needs and your needs, where
mhm,
it is about our deep, deep desire to relate to other people too, which is all about conversations and which is all about equality. And
mhm,
I think that it's so important that we have done the Taurus Venus work, so really this cultivation of what are my values, we need that as a base to be able to do our healing work
mhm.
around Libra.
Yeah.
So because the shadow of Libra, and we will come back to that later, I guess, is that I'm so focused on my counterpart that I completely forget about my own needs and values.
Mm, mm,
And being able to be in an equal relationship, and I don't mean just partnerships, I really mean relationships to everything, even to
yes.
our work. We are in a relationship with our projects and our work.
Yes.
um, so I think that it's so important that we have done this inner Venus work. And I really want to say a little bit more about what you already mentioned so brilliantly about the cardinal sign Aries and this loneliness of Aries. And yeah, to be super clear, I have my North Node in Aries, I have Jupiter conjunct my North Node in Aries, and I have Venus in Aries. So talking about loneliness, I think that Aries, the archetype of Aries, Mars in the first house, is really the commitment of our spirit to reincarnate in a separate body. It's really the moment where our spirit decides, okay, I'm separating from the cosmic womb, Pisces, and I'm committing to come down to Earth as a part of Source, but in a separate form. And then the commitment to be really in the body and on Earth happens in Taurus. But I think the commitment of our spirit, of this flame that we are, to come onto Earth and to separate and to actually discover ourselves as an individual being, which is on a soul level connected to Source. And this is the key, I think, against Aries loneliness, that I know on a soul level I'm part of the oneness. But it's really this, okay, I'm here, my soul decided to be here, and now my mission in this lifetime is to do my thing. And in a very positive way, because it has a reason that I'm here, and the reason is that I'm doing the thing that really wants to come through me. And in Aries, we explore that and we discover that. And in Leo, the second fire sign, we self-actualize and we express it. And in Sagittarius, we are sharing and teaching and exploring even more, I think. But I think in Aries, it's really this commitment of our soul to be an individual being and to not get lost in the soup of the cosmos.
Yes.
And that is, on the one hand, very traumatizing, talking about birth shock, and on the other birth trauma. So coming down to Earth, the cords are cut. We are separated from the cosmic womb, from the womb of our mother, Cancer, and it's square to Aries. So it's really traumatizing to be here. And with that, I think we can feel that in Aries. We can feel this loss and this separation and this loneliness. And I feel that the most lonely archetypes in the zodiac are, for me, Aries and Aquarius. In Aquarius, we feel lonely in the group.
Yeah.
And in Aries, we feel lonely just because we are who we are. And I think that there is so much, and this braveness in Aries is really this courage to be here on Earth and to be ourselves and to take up space and to allow ourselves to be here. That's the courage of Aries.
Yes.
And to really live our life, actually. That is the courage of Aries. And Jeffrey Wolf Green said about Mars, Mars is the leading edge of our soul's evolution. And I mean, that's it. And I think that with the North Node in Aries, there is this huge opportunity to find out what is really authentic for me, and maybe learning by doing. So it's a cardinal sign, as you already said. Maybe do something where you don't have a model for. where you don't
Mhm.
have even a plan for.
Mhm.
Just learning by doing and trying new things, trying new facets of your personality, trying new versions of yourself, because we have released so much old costumes and roles over the last months. And with that comes, it needs a lot of courage. And there is friction and there is the fear of rejection. Chiron is an Aries. Will other people like me? Will they reject me? Will I disappoint expectations? Libra. Um, and yeah, I mean, just uh, from my personal, I mean, I'm a solopreneur. I Everything that I created in regard to my business, it it felt like I want to do that, I must do that, but I never had a model in a way.
Mhm.
And I'm learning to be mentored and I'm learning to allow myself to get help now. But yeah, it's fucking scary to go out in the arena and do something new and be yourself.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Wow. Everything you said, Verena, 1,000%. Yes. Um, I think how I would want to respond to that is actually in talking a little bit about the South Node in Libra. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
I think what I've been holding space for within myself and in a lot of situations that feel like conflict. So, just a little bit of context right before we press record, Reina and I were talking about how, um, in my own relational fields, in different contexts that I've had, I've noticed that I have, um, I've come into a new spot in my spiral of healing that I am much more aware and in touch with and more able to communicate my unique perspective, which often is not the same as whatever the other person's saying, right? And in in me doing that, I'm noticing there's more to be worked on in my relational field because often it's so easy to just agree and amplify with whatever the other person is bringing in, right? But when you give yourself a little bit of extra space to actually think about whether you agree or not, oftentimes you disagree because, as Verena just said, you are a different person. You come from a different positionality, you have a different body, you have a different temperament, you have a different sets of trauma and skills and gifts, right? And so what I'm noticing a lot is when we Aries, there's a lot of uncomfortable moments, right? It kind of puts you in a pinch a little bit because you're not just following along, things don't just flow, right? But you're kind of creating your own current too. And something that I've been thinking a lot about is this idea that, even thinking about the cosmic soup, right? The cosmic soup being the thing that where all of us are just one. I
Mm.
think on some level there's some truth to that. But where I brush up against my own questionings about that idea is in my background, actually. So I studied classical music. And so I spent my 20s going to all of these orchestra concerts, right? And there's nothing more harmonious than a whole orchestra playing together.
Mhm.
But if you
Yeah.
actually zoom in and you look at the composition of the orchestra, they're made up of different instruments, right?
Mm.
Played by different people, playing different parts, playing different notes at the same time. I can't remember the last time I went to a great orchestra concert where all the instruments were just playing one note.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so it's really fascinating to me that we often have this idea, and this is where I'm starting to bring in the Libra piece, right? That harmony needs to be sameness. This
Hmm.
is absolutely not true, right? If we look at music, literally harmony, the definition of harmony is when two or three different notes are played together, right? And within harmony itself, and this is just to get pretty technical with music terms, music theory terms, there's what we call consonance or dissonance, right?
Yeah.
And like notes played together can have a it can feel really good and they can feel like they're kind of playing with one another in a harmonious way, or they can be disharmonious, right? But the reality is that harmony as a larger concept itself necessitates difference. There would be no harmony without difference. There would just be unison. There would just be sameness. And I think for a lot of our history as humans, we've been taught that sameness is the foundation for safety.
Mm.
But this is not necessarily true, right? Um, we can think about, you know, for example, I want to use a pretty neutral example, which is our digestive system. If we continue to eat the same thing every
The
single day,
Virgo rising brings in the digestion all the time.
I
Sorry.
know, I know,
I love it, Jonathan.
I know. But you know, like for example, if you want to be healthy, you can't just eat vanilla ice cream. You can't, right? That actually does not it's not the most conducive for your digestive system. It doesn't create or uh, necessitate or facilitate harmony within your body.
Love that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can't just eat food that have the same temperature. You can't just eat food that have the same flavor. You can't just eat food that have the same color, right? You have to have a balance of things. And I think this is where Libra can really bring in a lesson for us, because we've somehow confused in our human relating world, right? We've somehow confused being the same as that being safe or being good. But in reality, I think what we can learn from Libra, you know, and I use the metaphor also of the seasons in the northern hemisphere, right? If you think about the start of fall, which is the season often associated in the northern hemisphere with Libra, you see dead leaves and very green leaves kind of side by
Mm.
side, right? So you see death and you see peak aliveness all at the same time. And so I think harmony is created through deep respect. Harmony is energetics. Harmony is not rules, right? It's not about we have to agree on the surface level. But harmony is about me understanding that our difference is rooted in the fact that we experience life differently as different humans. And so, from that perspective, I may not understand everything that all of your stances or all of your opinions or your preferences, Verena, but I can appreciate that we are humans and we
Yeah.
live on this earth and we share some of the same resources. And so, how can I find true respect from difference? And I think
Yeah.
when you are able to make space for that, that's when harmony actually begins, right? Harmony begins by making more space for different perspectives. And in creating more space for different perspectives, you allow beauty, you allow um, collaboration, right? Like we wouldn't be collaborating here, Verena, if you can say exactly what I'm saying with exactly the same tone and the same wording as me, then I don't need you, right? Like we need each other because we are different, you know? And so I think that's where the release of the South Node in Libra to me comes in, which is releasing some of the tensions around feeling like when there is difference, I need to either self-abandon and let go of my perspective, or that I need to um, be in this like fight mode with you, right? I think
Yeah.
one thing that's interesting to think about with Libra as well is that it's often associated with justice, right? The idea of justice or the idea of the scale. And I think another thing that I will bring in, the last thing I'll bring in here is that in a lot of the imageries, right, of justice, oftentimes in ancient times, the scale is not equal.
Yeah.
The
And
scale
she's
is tipped.
often blinded.
Right. She's often blindfolded. And it's making me think also of like the Two of Swords, you know, for example, in the tarot, right? That navigating this requires intuition. You know, we don't have full view of everything. So how can we be aware and really own to the fact that we don't have access to all of the different perspectives, no matter how open we are or how wise we are, right? And so really making space, you know, for a little bit of grace to come in, right? A little bit of graciousness to come in. Mhm.
Oh wow, Jonathan, I love that so strongly. And I've it really resonates, and I just want to add some points. I think that, and I reflected about that a lot when I prepared my presentation for a workshop about Pallas Athena, that is part of the Goddess series that I'm giving with Martha Halter Heinz, Conversations with the Goddesses. And Pallas Athena is actually traveling with Mars through Virgo. So she's super strong at the moment during the time that the nodes are shifting. And I think Pallas Athena can teach us so much that sometimes to create peace, we need conflict.
Mm.
And I think it's really this, maybe with Libra, reframing our ideas around controversy or conflict and really seeing it more like an opportunity to create peace and to create harmony that goes beyond a superficial idea of everything is fine, everything looks good, everything is shiny. So, because I think this is shadow Libra, so don't want to work out the conflicts. And I think we can learn to neither be in constant fight mode, which is a trauma reaction, nor be in complete fawn and fawning, which is also a trauma reaction, but really be in a very self-responsible, self-aware conversation with each other, where all of our Aries selves can sit together and do the Libra conversations. And maybe through this widen our horizon and bring a new level of consciousness onto the world and in all of our spaces. And I think with Libra, we often think that Libra, when we think Libra, balance, in Libra, we often have to experience the extremes to come into the balance. I mean,
Yeah.
Libra is the sign that stands for the opposition, even for the astrological aspect of the opposition. And it means that it's the opposition which builds the full moon too. So it's really seeing the other side, having a wider perspective, being more objective, seeing my point of view and seeing your point of view. And I think I have the feeling that, especially because with the Northern Aries, I see this opportunity about discovery, the discovery of ourselves in a new way. I think with the Libra South Node, we can really heal to heal our binary or dual thinking and really learn to sit with the both end.
Yes.
Inside of us and inside the world. And neither and sit with the both ends without losing what is authentic for us.
Yes. Yes.
And that's a very, very fine line.
Absolutely. And here's, I think, where the line is, Verena. And this is something that came to me like just as you were speaking. Depending on where you are in that journey, you know, I think a lot of us who are, I'm just going to imagine that a lot of people who listen to our conversation here have been exposed to this idea of thinking beyond the binary, right? Like thinking the both and rather than the either or. So I want to challenge us to go a step further than just holding the both and. I think that in order to truly, not just intellectually, but with our whole body and our whole system, really be able to hold the binary, you need to sit with the part of you that's deeply uncomfortable with the perspective of the other person that you don't actually agree with. Because even if we hold a both and, right, it is almost always the case that we are not totally equal with regards to how we feel about the two sides, right? It's like we can take the astrological world as a little microcosm of this, and I think both of us can maybe speak to this in a way that is, yeah, I mean, even just thinking about us, we're both astrologers. We practice maybe slightly different flavors of astrology, slightly different traditions. But I think that, thinking about how even in this conversation, we are holding the both end, right? We're holding the evolutionary astrology perspective. We're talking about traditional rulership. But I think in order for us to be truly in harmony with that tension, I have to sit with the part of myself that maybe has some discomfort about modern branches of astrology. You have to sit with the part of yourself that have some discomfort with the more ancient parts of astrology, right? And I think in sitting with the part of us that's uncomfortable with the other perspective, that's how we can truly hold space for that perspective. Because what I often see is a lot of people who are listening to us right now, and a lot of people who are interested in astrology are extremely intelligent people. We can intellectually hold it. That's not the problem, right? The problem is sometimes I think the deeper ways in which we reject the part of us that feels uncomfortable with a particular perspective, or actually feels uncomfortable with our own perspective. This is something I see a lot in the Libra archetype, that the Libra energy can also get very uncomfortable with their own perspective, that they feel like they need to knock down the other perspective to validate their own. Right? It's so funny that, like, in the desire of wanting to be so Venusian and so like holding space for everyone, that there is a discomfort in just holding one's own perspective and gently saying, that's yours, this is mine, right? We don't need to merge. In the urgency to merge that is sometimes present in the Libra archetype, we can cause unnecessary conflicts. I see this with myself too. Like, I am a sun in seventh house person, and in modern astrology, the seventh house is often related with Libra. And
Yeah.
sometimes for me, I get into these really weird tension with the people in my life simply because I'm uncomfortable with my own desires. And I don't want to hold it,
Projection.
and then I start to like make it about the other person, which is not true, right? So that's one thing I want to say. And then the other thing I want to say to respond to you, Verena, and your brilliant share was, I'm also thinking about how in cardinal signs, right, initiate something. They are the signs that create containers for something. And so it's interesting thinking about how we're moving from creating earth, water containers into creating air, fire containers, because I think the kind of container that's necessary in order for us to really work on allow the Aries Libra lessons or the Aries Libra medicine to come through is probably slightly less tangible than the Taurus Scorpio stuff, right? I'm thinking about how, in order for us to really have, that ability to hold our own perspectives while also respecting other people and understanding where they're coming from and giving a lot of grace about the other perspective, we also may need to create containers in our lives where these conversations can become possible. Because I think, like, for example, thinking about my own relationship with my partner, I've noticed that some more thorny conversations are very difficult to have when the only interactions we have is like all the daily stuff, right? If we only have conversations when we're cleaning the dishes or we're cleaning the house or when we're walking the dog, right? Then we can't really have deep conversations. Sometimes, in order to have deep conversations that allow for tension to come through and to be worked with and to not be a source of separation, but to help us understand one another better and help us understand ourselves better, we need to create some container where that feels safe. So just to be very concrete, one thing I'm thinking about is, perhaps with romantic partners or with collaborators or with friends, normalizing creating time where you intentionally talk about the relationship, like even today, like I'm just using us as an example, Verena, because we had this email exchange, where I wasn't feeling that great this morning. And I wanted us to record this conversation from a place of full honesty. Like, I don't want to be, having to hide what I'm moving through right now. So I emailed you and I'm like, hey, this is what I'm feeling right now. How are you feeling? Right. And I think also this is where, working with fire and air, it might be really helpful for us to slow the pace down a little bit and not
Yeah.
feel like we have to come into resolutions. Yeah. What are your thoughts about that? Mhm.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that too, Jonathan. And I know we have to wrap up slowly but surely.
Yeah.
Um, but and I think we should definitely continue this whole Aries Libra conversation, by the way, because it's so rich and it just
So
started.
rich.
I would be so interested in continue it maybe in some months.
Yeah.
But Jonathan, what you said, yeah, you said so very good things about Libra that I want to reflect upon this idea of that we sometimes feel uncomfortable with our own truth in Libra. And I think that there is this thing that often in Libra we think that our counterpart expect something from us without that they are saying it. And then we put so much pressure on ourselves because we think we must fulfill this expectation. And then we get maybe passive aggressive because we think they expect that from me. And then it turns out that they don't expect that from us. And this is such a Libra. The struggle is real in Libra because we are so focused on what others expect from us that we sometimes project our ideas onto others, and being in an honest conversation as we did today before we met can bring so much more peace and so much more lightness into the relationship, because when you are saying what you expect and I am saying what I expect and I say what I can give, and when you say what you can give, then there is equality, and then we can see how our different expectations or maybe same expectation can work and play together. So this is, I think, something that can be really emphasized over the next months to really start having the honest conversations about expectations, about our true will and our true needs, Aries. So really putting the Aries, I want, I need, I will, into the Libra conversation, to really get clear about unspoken expectations that are maybe just in your head, and nobody wants you to do that actually, and you don't have to put so much pressure on you. So I think this is really important. And one other thing, in regard to the pace, and this is really something that is, and maybe that is worth another conversation, because what I see personally as a huge as a thing with the North Node in Aries, especially after we had this time with Jupiter in Aries, is that I think one challenge with Aries is restlessness, is really being in a constant fight and flight trauma reaction, this feeling of that life is a war zone, and really this feeling of there is a little bit fear of missing out sometimes
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
This feeling of, oh wow. For me personally, there are two versions. The one version is, wow, I'm so lit up, I'm so inspired, I want to do all the things, and I'm overriding my capacities completely, and I'm forgetting that I'm having a body, and then I'm burning out. Happened. And the other thing is that due to trauma and conditioning, I have the feeling I have to be constantly in a push mode. I have to do constantly. And we live in a meritocracy where we get a trophy when we are doing constantly and working constantly and being in this yang mode and don't rest and be on fire all the time. And then we also override our capacity and really burn out. So I think there is this really being aware in Aries when I'm crossing my Taurus boundaries. And I really hope that Jupiter in Taurus reflects an energy that might help us with that process, because I think that it is really about, in Aries, it's really about knowing what your boundaries are and being very careful with them. Sometimes maybe a little bit pushing them, that can be healthy, especially when you are more the earthy type that is more leaned back. And some Aries fire is good by really being very, very aware with your resources and tending your flame and nurturing your flame and becoming very aware that when you are so inspired, maybe you don't have to do it all the things at once. And maybe it even becomes more fruitful if you slow down a little bit. And on the other hand, if you have the feeling that you are just worthy when you are doing all the time, I think then, I mean, I can just speak for myself, but I think there is a lot of healing work that we can do with these conditioning that are often coming from our society, from our upbringing, from our ancestry. Where we use our own body like a working machine and constantly push harder. Yeah.
I'm also feeling that in the Jupiter in Taurus as well, because we will have Jupiter in Taurus for a lot of, at least until mid next year, with this overlapping with this particular transit. Yeah. Yeah, I think I will say too, maybe one final thing that I will share here. I have a couple things actually. Number one is I think really considering the possibility that true connection can only come from honesty, because when we're not honest with ourselves and with others, we are not showing up as ourselves. So who knows what the other person is connecting to, but it's not the real you, right? And this is a hard lesson for me to learn as someone who's very mutable, because there's many different versions of myself, which is part of me honoring my reality and my truth as well. But I think what I've noticed is when I give people a chance, and especially this is in relation to what you were saying earlier, Verena, about projection and about expectations, right? When I act from the space of thinking or assuming that the person that I'm in a relationship with, whether that's friendship or collaboration or romantic relationship or family, if I think that the person I'm relating to is expecting something and I haven't fully verified that with them, and I just kind of go along with that assumption, then I'm building something on shaky foundations, right? Because I'm only using their foundation in order to build the relationship, but I'm not also adding my own foundation, right? And I think it might be interesting to think about what have we learned from Scorpio Taurus, right? I think about creating foundations as maybe much more Scorpio Taurus than Aries Libra. This is debatable.
Yeah.
But I think what foundations have what have we learned about creating foundations from the Scorpio Taurus that we can bring into this Aries Libra nodal axis, right? And how can we maybe spend a little bit extra time creating the right foundation before starting to build on things, right? Before starting to build the relationship, before starting to build the project, before starting to build the friendship. How can we start at the place where you know what my truth is and I know what your truth is, which is something you already said. And I think the other thing I want to mention too, especially for people listening who are, who maybe like to consume a lot of spiritual content, I think that there's a lot of spirituality that's based on this idea of erasing the personal stuff, right? Like I I don't know. I get a little bit allergic about the term spiritual bypassing, even though I think that's very real. But I think the reason why I'm a little allergic to it is because it's a word that's tossed around a lot, and I think people have lost touch with what it actually means. But what I will say is this, right? Whatever's coming up for you, the discomfort, the feelings, the preferences, the desires, the weird, unique thing that you think nobody will understand, these are all part of your spiritual path too. It's not separate. And I think when I look back at my own spiritual journey, for example, there was a lot of time when I feel like I need to erase my own preferences in order to be spiritual, right? That, oh, if I get angry, I'm not spiritual. If I get pissed at someone or I get really activated, that's not spiritual. But I think Libra and Aries nodal shift, right, is actually inviting us to really deeply look at that, to really work on that. And rather than pushing it away and pretending it doesn't exist, embracing that and letting that be part of your spiritual journey, part of your spiritual path, rather than thinking that you have to get rid of it.
I love that, Jonathan. I just can emphasize that. And one thing that I really wanted to mention with this foundation and the stable ground, like you said, I think it is no coincidence that while the nodes shifted, we have not only Jupiter and Taurus, but we also have Pluto retrograde again in Capricorn in an exact square to the lunar nodes. So in the last week of July, so the first exact square will be this Sunday, 23rd. And then we have 3 exact squares in the last week of July. And I think this reflects how important it is to really check and double check if our foundation is stable and if there is some unfinished business. And when I created my Venus cycle and Leo workshop, which is available, maybe we can talk about that in a second. I said that with the Venus cycle in Capricorn, and I now say additionally to the lunar nodes in Scorpio and Taurus, we really created the foundation so that we can now play on a stable ground. And I think especially now in the time, so in summer 2023, so the lunar nodes has just shifted. Pluto is in Capricorn. The Venus in Capricorn cycle ends, the new cycle starts. I think it's very much a phase. This summer and late summer is really much a phase of, okay, really checking what do I need. And Saturn is still retrograde, so restructuring. What structures do I really need? Is my foundation stable? Do I have a ground? Do I have a fundament so that I can create and discover and play with some security? So not throwing everything away, but really giving our Aries self and our Venus and Leo self a foundation and clear structures. And I feel and I see it, so many of us have really worked so hard over the last months, and I mean really the soul work. So really this facing your fears, digging deep, and really clarifying your own ground. And I think this is so important to keep in mind and heart in our soul when we go into the Aries energy, because that helps us to not get completely head over heel into something that is actually not sustainable in a way.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That's such a beautiful reminder. Thank you, Verena.
Thank you, Jonathan.
I'm curious if you want to share a little bit about any offers you have currently as we're wrapping this up, where folks can find you or maybe get readings from you. Yeah, all of the things.
Thank you so much, Jonathan, for asking. So you can find me on my website, verenaborell.com, and there you find all of my offerings. And you can also follow me on Instagram. I'm very active on Instagram, and in my Instagram stories, I share almost daily energy updates. And you can get on my newsletter list. So I put a lot of devotion and love into my newsletters, which is a very good way to stay in contact with me, to get free astrology and energy updates, but also updates around my offerings. And yeah, you can book one-on-one evolutionary astrology sessions with me in English or German language. And I have some current offerings in English language. So I just gave this Venus cycle in Leo workshop. I gave it in English language and in German language. And when you sign up, you get both workshops. And it includes not only around 2 hour video lecture with the Venus meditation, Venus and Leo meditation, but also some additional material, the most important dates of the Venus cycle, and some more Venus inspiration that I pulled on the course platform. And my other offering, which I'm really excited about, which is really Aries for me, is that I am wanting to hold a course in English language this autumn. So it's not yet, I'm not yet sure when it will start, but I think it will be around 2 months.
Mm.
And the title of the course is Transits for Evolution. And it's really for people who want to look at the transits from a very expansive perspective, and really dive into working with transits to see the highest potential of them. And it's really about learning to work with transits in a constructive way, to rise your consciousness, to even help your clients, to create offerings that are in tune with the current energies. So it should be a really expansive container. It will be a live container, so live classes. And if you are interested in that, you can already sign up for the waiting list. And just the waiting list, people will get an extra pre-sale goodie and receive more information as soon as I have them. And for my German-speaking friends, I also have my big Astro Facilitator program that starts in August, and there are just 2 seats left. So it's a wonderful astrology program if you want to learn astrology as an additional tool for your practice to support your clients even deeper and more holistically. And I have an all-time favorite video course, my Astro Spaceholder Starter course, which gives you the basic knowledge of astrology so that you can create offerings, courses, circles, ceremonies in tune with astrology. Yeah, I think that's it. That's enough.
Awesome. That's beautiful. Thank you, Verena. I love your rich garden of offerings. It's very Gemini rising.
Yeah.
Mercury in Gemini. I love it. I love it. Cool.
And Jonathan, please share, where can people find you? And when
Yes.
you're listening to Jonathan's podcast, you can find me on YouTube too. But
Yes. Yes. Follow Verena on YouTube. If you're listening to this or you're watching the video, I would say the best place to find me these days is my podcast, like
Yeah.
hands down. It's so funny because this really speaks to my type actually in human design, which is I'm a generator. So I really, when I'm in love and I feel the energy of like a particular container, I can't get enough of it. So I do pretty comprehensive weekly contemplations about the astrology, about the energy that I'm sensing. On my podcast. So that's out every Monday. And I'm slowly getting into doing more conversations. You know, I've been sharing my conversations with Verena because they're more or less time sensitive, but I've also been sitting on some conversations. The podcast actually started as a series of conversations. So you can go back and listen to different conversations. They're all very timeless.
I highly recommend that. It's
Yeah,
Your podcast is beautiful. Just
thank you.
that. Yeah.
Thank you. I really love being on the podcast. Um, I also offer one-on-one readings and sessions with me. Folks can book Akashic readings or astrology readings. Um, and it's literally my favorite. I just absolutely love doing one-on-one with people. Um, and that's mostly it. I am definitely on Instagram. You can find me there. Instagram has a new app now called Threads that I'm obsessed with. That I I am so obsessed with Threads. I am on Threads
Your
all the
inner
time.
Leo loves it.
I know, and it's a different side of me, I will say. So if anybody wants to see that side of me, it's very different. Much more spicy, I will say. Much more spontaneous. So you can find me there as well. Mhm. And
Oh wow. Yeah.
I have a bunch of new offerings coming up. I don't know when they're gonna come out yet, but if you are listening to this and you got this far, you're the first to hear about them. Yeah, I will be sharing about them soon, but one is basically going to be a weekly meditation circle. That's for sure happening. And then the other one is the other one is still in the works, but what I'm thinking about is I'm actually going to be creating like a monthly or somewhat monthly astrology study hall where basically I will talk about one topic each month, and people can either drop in every month or or the months that they're interested in, or they can kind of follow the journey along throughout the whole time. But yeah, and I think that I'm still workshopping it. I'm still fine-tuning all the details, but essentially what I would want to do uh is to facilitate discussions and practice sessions around astrological techniques that may feel a little bit daunting to study by yourself. Again, as Verena knows already, and some of you may know, I'm a Virgo rising with Gemini moon. I cannot get enough of like studying and making studying, much more easeful. So yeah, I will be creating that, and you heard it. You heard it here first. I don't know when it's gonna start, but it's definitely gonna happen. Yeah.
I love that, Jonathan. And I just have to add one thing, because talking about Libra,
Mhm.
I'm doing, together with a collaborator, with Martha Alter Heinz, my beautiful workshop series, Conversations with the Goddesses. So if you're
Nice.
more interested in asteroid goddesses and planetary bodies, such as Aries, Xena, Persephone, Sedna, you can join this workshop series at any time you want. So I just wanted to, because it's so funny, we're talking about Aries and I'm just talking about the things that I'm doing, and I'm completely forgetting about my beautiful collaboration with Martha. So I had to put that out. And I'm having a podcast in German language too. So if
Nice.
you understand German, then my podcast might be interesting. I'm so excited for your Leo Aries babies that you are creating, Jonathan. I think we have to continue this conversation privately about your offering
Yes.
in a while, and we have to continue this conversation about Aries and Libra maybe here on YouTube and your podcast in a while,
Yeah.
because I really enjoyed it and it's so rich and deep.
Me
Yeah.
too. I think there's many more
Maybe
topics we can
during
talk
the
about.
eclipse time.
That would be great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, one final thing, since you brought up your collaborator, I'm also collaborating with my collaborator, Britton LaRue. And Britton and I have a course called Astrology as Praxis. We are currently thinking about the next iteration, so stay tuned. If you are on my newsletter, you'll be the first to hear about it, or if you follow my podcast, I'll also be talking about it there. But yes, there will be more ways to work with me in the future, including if you resonate with my collective or combined voice with Britain. Yeah, who is Britain's one of my dearest friends and my first teacher. So yeah, I think that's it, Verena. We
That's
have
it.
done a very comprehensive share about our offerings, and I think
Yeah.
that's it. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. And I'm already looking forward to, to continue this conversation
Me
about
too.
Aries and Libra or any other astrology topic. Thank you
Yes.
so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Verena. Always a delight.
And thanks everyone for watching, for listening. And we are always looking forward to hear from you, feedback. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Let us know. Yeah. All
Thank you.
right. Take care.
Bye. Bye.